From ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 in Southern California. This is BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgensen.
Welcome out to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio. I am your host, Tyler Jorgensen. I just took the energy up a level, but I am super excited to be talking with Alex Hormozi, the founder of Gym Launch, because Alex and I go back a few years, and I've got to experience kind of firsthand, we'll call it like first and a half hand, his journey. And I know a little bit of his background, and most people know him today as the dominant force completely changing the landscape of fitness, gyms, and marketing. But I want you to learn from him what's possible, what he has done with his business, and learn from him from his experience. So welcome out to the show, Alex.
Very happy to be here. It'll be good to catch up. Hopefully I can live up to half of the introduction.
I let you brought the energy right back down. So, Alex, all right, first thing, what is Gym Launch for those that may not know?
So Gym Launch is just a comprehensive system to increase the profitability of a gym. And so if like the predominant services that are out there for gyms solve only one piece of the problem. And so typically people will see an increase in one thing, one aspect of their business, but then it doesn't trickle down to bottom line. Right. And so they may have an agency who gets them leads, but they don't know how to work the leads to get them to schedule, or they can get them to schedule, but they can't get them to show. And once they show, they don't know how to close them. And when they do close them, they're closing the wrong price or wrong packaging. And so that even if they do have people in their gym, they're actually still not profitable because their price points don't actually make sense. And then once they actually maybe do fix their price points and whatnot, they don't know how to retain people so that they can, actually grow their recurring revenue month after month. And so if you think about that, that's just kind of five primary functions of the business, right? You have lead generation, lead nurture, sales, fulfillment, and then resell and retention for a gym. And so we walk through all of those with the gym owner, and we have a structured process of turning a gym around. And typically we start with acquisition because that's usually where we can inject cash flow into a business. And so that gives them breathing room so that they can then break the rest of the gym because they realize very quickly, oh shit, I thought like every gym owner says, like, we have such a great community. We have such a great product. If only people knew about us. But the real is that people haven't heard about you because your product actually isn't that good. Right. And if it were so good, you wouldn't actually have these other issues. And so we kind of get them to terms with that because once they start acquiring customers and start churning customers because they actually are bringing people in, then they realize, holy crap, my stuff is not that good. And so then we're like, hey, good news. We've already solved this problem. Here's the process to fix this. It's very reliable. We've done it as a million times. So
you and I both came from running gyms, right? We both own gyms here in Southern California. You'd consulted and done some stuff. And for those that haven't been in the fitness industry, most gyms are barely breaking even, or they're losing money, or it's just, they're not healthy business. Even if they appear to be they're struggling. Yeah. And it's probably because from my experience I not only did I open gyms that I owned, but I also helped open dozens of other gyms through like consulting and selling them products. And you mentioned 5 prongs. Yeah. Most of them only think about that last piece, like retention. And it's because their friends and family are in the business and they stay there. So they think their retention's in place, but most of them aren't thinking about any of it. They think if I just focus on good training, everyone else will be here all the time. So they're actually not running any of those 5 prongs of their business.
Right.
So let's go back. Now let's peel back. That's what Gym Launch is. So you didn't wake up out of high school and say, I'm going to create a gym marketing business. You probably also didn't go to college at some fancy school and say, I'm going to open a gym. What was that first spark that happened to Alex Hormozi that you realized you're not wired like everyone else and you're an entrepreneur?
It's funny because I think there's a lot of marketing out there. There's a lot of hustle mantra that it talks about how entrepreneurs know that they're entrepreneurs from the time they're 3 years old. And they've always been selling stuff and they're not good at school and they can't focus and blah, blah, blah. I didn't really have any of that. I was great at school. I finished magna cum laude, finished in 3 years at Vanderbilt. I got a GMAT score above Harvard's mid score. I didn't have any of those things. And so mine actually came from an extreme period of pain, which was I had done the trodden path that I was supposed to do. And I worked at a management consulting firm, which is what you're supposed to do after you go to the fancy school. Right. And it was like a year into that business, I was just like, I hate this. Like I was able to buy a condo and a high rise, and I was 22 years old. And it was very much like a rock top situation where I was like, is this it? And I kind of hate my day. And so it was just like, I got to a point where I didn't feel like living anymore. So I was like, well, if this is it, like I might as well do something that I like. And all the people I worked with I was like, I'm going to start a business. And they're like, if you don't start a gym, we will start it for you. Like, you don't shut up about fitness ever. And so I was like, all right. And I knew from the consulting world that the easiest way to acquire information was to talk to experts. It's the fastest way to learn because they've already done a lot of things. And so I emailed 40 people on the internet that seemed like they had something together. And Sam Bakhtiar in Chino Hills responded. And I said, hey man, can I come out and work for free? And he said, sure. And, more or less, I sold my condo, packed my car, and I drove across in 36 hours, and I was like, hey, I'm here. And so he was like, that's sketchy. I'm going to go out to lunch, but you can stay at the gym and I'll be back. And that's kind of what kicked it off. And then I worked there for 3 months, and then I opened my own facility in Huntington Beach, which was the first one I opened. If I knew then what I knew now, I definitely wouldn't have done that because I didn't know anything. But I think that one of the biggest advantages of being ignorant is that you don't know what you don't know, and you take risks that you don't even fully understand. And sometimes you luck out and things work. 2 weeks before I actually opened the facility, a friend of mine was like, hey, we should go to this marketing conference. And I was like, what is it about? And they're like, Facebook marketing. And this is 2012. And so, I was in early on that. And so the conference was 2 days in Vegas. It was $3,000, which was like all of the money that I had. And it was, if you don't make $10,000 by the end of the weekend, we'll give you your money back. And I was like, cool. Cause I didn't understand the information marketing world or any of those things. And so I did it, and I did not make $10,000. But I understood enough about like, okay, so you can place ads, and they didn't even have conversions yet. It was like boosting a post with a really hot chick. You know what I mean? And that was like what it was. And that's what that's what I did. And I opened my gym, and I was able to sign up, I think 26 or 29 people in my first 2 weeks, but I didn't know anybody. I was from Baltimore. So it was truly 100% had to be off the paid traffic because I knew no one. And so that was kind of like what got me into it. I mean, I could tell you more about sleeping on the floor for 9 months, but like,
yeah, no, we will go down some of those roads. But so my thing is like, so I love that term. I've never heard that actually. Rock top, right? Yeah. You were doing well, but you were massively unfulfilled. Yeah. So let's say, so you opened the first gym. Yeah. Because you are like, you learn, right? You're a vicious learner. You will go out and pursue whatever knowledge is needed to solve the problem in front of you. You took a gym idea that you knew was, now looking back, that you were missing pieces, but you went and you kept learning each thing that you needed. So you grew that, right? You ended up with how many locations?
6.
So you grew to 6 locations, but then you hit another wall, right, in your hero's journey. What happened next? Is like, why are we not saying, hey, here's Alex, the guy that owns the franchise of gyms in the United States, right? So what happened?
That was the original plan. So United Fitness was the name, and it was supposed to be America's Gym, and that was kind of the dream around it. And I had a plan to get to 10 locations by the end of the year. And when I kind of announced that publicly, like there's a Facebook Live, I might still be up. Like shortly thereafter, like my mom got sick. And so I basically flew to the East Coast to be with her. And I just kind of left the gyms. I was like, I didn't like do check-ins. Like I was gone, like for months, like gone. And thankfully they kept running, and like they ran themselves enough. Like the profit went down, but like they still were making enough. Like I still took my pay, and but they kept going, which is, for anybody who has a small business or even multiple, like, it's a miracle. But anyways, I was on the East Coast, and I think when you kind of get out of the grind, because I had my head down it was 6 locations in 3 years, just all off the cash flow from the gyms. And so like I was asset rich and cash poor, because every time I had enough money, I would open another facility. And so I just saw what the next however many years was going to look like. And I was like, it's just like the cadence of opening speeds up, because you make more money faster than the other ones to open the next one. But I was like, I just have to keep exposing myself to more and more and more liability, all these leases, all these, all these things. And while I was out there, my mom was sick. My old coworker, the one who was like, you have to open a gym, was like, hey, there's this guy here. His name's Josh Price. He's got a gym. He's struggling. Do you think you can help him out? I said, sure. You know, a friend of yours is a friend of mine. And so, long story short with Josh, I called him up and, I said, hey man, do you have a marketing budget? And he was like, what's that? And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, how about I spend my money and, you know, you can work the leads and sell them. We'll do like a rev share thing. And he was like, well, you know, can they meet between 12 and 2? Cause I'll have my two, you know, my 3-month-old and my 2-year-old with me. Is that going to be a problem? I was like, yeah, that's going to be a problem. No one's going to come between 12 and 2, with your kids. And so finally I was like, okay, do you have like a hat and a t-shirt that says, you know, CrossFit WSA, which was the gym, his name. And he said, yeah, sure. And I said, all right, well, I'll work your front desk for you. And so for anyone's had like somebody who's sick, you just want to keep you don't want to have idle hands. You know what I mean? I was just like, I did the only thing I knew how to do, which is run a gym, you know? And so I was there, and within a week, we signed up 70 clients at his gym. He only had 70, so we doubled his gym within a week. And the deal I made with him was, I'll get the upfront revenue and I'll pay the costs and I'll do the work and I'll do the sales, but then you get the customers and then you can convert them on the back end into you know, recurring. Fair deal. There's no risk on his side. Right. And I think I made like 35 grand in that week. And I was like, well, this is chill. Like there was no operations. I was like, that was pretty mellow for a week's worth of work. Like that was cool. Yeah. I was like, I wonder if any other gyms would be interested in a no risk offer for me to fill your gym up. And it turned out there were a lot of gyms that were interested in that offer. And so really quickly, between word of mouth, and I made a couple Facebook posts that were really poor and not well targeted. And I had enough people say, like, I mean, people were questioning me for like $500 down to save a date. You know what I mean? Like, are you sure? It's like, I'm going to fly out. It's like my flight costs more than this. And so anyways, we ended up booking 32 gyms over the next 6 months. And you know, in classic style, I was like, if you're going to do it, let's do it big. And so the first month we really did it. We had 6 gyms that we were going to launch at the same time with 6 guys. And so it was during that transition where between the time where I did that first launch, and when we did basically fully pivoting to gym launch was, May to January. So it was kind of like a 7-month period. And during that period of time, I made the decision to close the gyms, to start this new venture. Right. Which was done for you gym launching, you know, fill your gym in 30 days. Yep. That's the shtick.
So, and that's when you and I connected, was around this time of the model, right? You were starting, I mean, we had actually met before that while you were still doing, running United Fitness, but then we connected again, around this time, and we started chatting a lot more about the bit. I mean, possibly because I was a prospect and had 5 gyms, you were like, oh, I should talk to this guy, but also just because you and I connected well. And so I mean, now we're onto our third wall, right? So you built the first career, you pivoted, you built the chain of gyms, you pivoted. I guess it's even the 4th. You built Gym Launch version 1.0, and something happened where you realized this was not scalable. What happened?
So the fundamental flaw, there was multiple flaws in the model. First, it was not sustainable for the sales guys because they were out 21 to 24 days a month. A lot of them had family and kids, and so they were literally back home for 6 days and then back on the road again. And so they had all signed up for that and were excited about it. But like month 3, I had guys being like, my wife's going to divorce me. Like, and I was like, okay, well that could be a problem. Don't get divorced. That was like a human, you know, issue that wasn't a flaw with the model, but just like humans couldn't do that. And I understand that. The second issue was there was a ton of logistics. So for every single launch, when it wasn't me, it was flights, hotel room every day, car rental every day, ad spend every day, and then commissions for the sales every day. And then there still had to be some left over. And so we generated a lot of revenue, but the margins were not nearly as good as I had expected them to be. Like our first month we did 180,000, which was amazing for a new business. You know what I mean? Like unbelievable. Yeah. But I mean, the margins were paper thin. And then the real issue happened when fundamentally I had no control over fulfillment, because my fulfillment was sales. My promise was I will fill your gym and sell. And so for me, my fulfillment was to do that promise and sell, right? The problem was that what the customer was getting sold, and fundamentally a lot of the gyms that I worked with were struggling gyms, and they were struggling for a reason, right? Their product wasn't that good. And I'm saying that
we talked about those 5 principles, right? So if you fix principle 1 by not teaching them, but instead doing it for them, and then all the other principles still suck.
Right. You attach a rocket. It was you put jetpacks on a pig, I think is the saying, you know.
I've never heard that, but I love it.
Yeah. You you very quickly see that, like, when you have pro level acquisition with not pro level fulfillment, it's running a speed train into a brick wall. Like it's ugly. And so I had two gym owners stand up in the middle of it, because they're like, I want you to fill my gym. And if you are, and we averaged over 100 sales in 21 days. And that was our average. Our top one, we did 240 sales in a month, which was Leila. Of course, she has the record, but which is my wife, for those of you who don't know.
Yes.
She always has to one-up me. Anyways, if you're a gym owner and you have 100 clients, you don't even have the faintest concept of what getting 200 more clients looks like. You have no clue. You don't have the capacity for it. You don't understand the systems, the admin, the retention things, like all of the aspects of fulfillment. You don't have any of that dialed in because you haven't had to. And so it just created this massive gap between what was sold and what was being delivered. And so I had two gym owners. I think this was like March-ish, so like 3 or 4 months in. I can't remember the exact month. But one of them stood up on the chair, because I got many emails from customers because we had the billing. It was like, this gym owner just stood up in the middle of class and just told me to just leave and refund. And so in a span of like 5 days, I had like $100,000 in refunds that came through, which was horrible.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think this model works. Like, there's something that's fundamentally off here. And so what ended up happening is, I was like, listen, we know how to market. We know how to sell weight loss. Why don't we just take the gym owner out of it and we'll just do it online, right? And so we started Queen Transformation, which was because Leila's lost 85 pounds. She did fitness competition, all that stuff. And so I was like, you be the face. I'll be behind the scenes. I don't want to be the face. And so within 14 days, we're doing 1,000 a day on that. And I was like, awesome, this works. We'll get the 8 sales guys off the road. We'll bring them in. We'll have 8 guys doing 1,000 a day with 8,000 a day. This can work. And so I had to tell all the guys who were going to launch in May, hey, we're not doing it. So we had 8 guys who were supposed to launch, and I called each of them up and I was like, hey, just so you know, like, we're not doing this. Sorry. And the first guy I talked to was Chris Barnett. He's still with us. And he was like, dude, we need this. Like we're going to, I've been doing this for 6 years. I put everything I have into it. I'm up to dead in my eyeballs to make this work. Like, we need this. He's like, Russell said that I should talk to you. Like, I'm here. He's from Boise. Right. So he's like, I need this. And so I was like, all right, listen, man, I will not do it for you. And that was the fundamental shift. It was like, but I'll show you how to do it.
And you and I talked at this time, and it was not a simple thing for you to get to the point psychologically where you were going to share your secrets.
No, because I was like,
that was a big thing.
I was like, this is making so much money. Right.
Yeah, it was like, cool, I'll go ahead and teach you. It was like, it was a hard thing for you to make that pivot.
It was massive. Yeah, it was a scarcity mindset at the time for me, because I was like, well, if I teach them my secrets, they're not going to need me anymore, and like, all this stuff. They're like, what if they steal my? It's just retarded. And so the only way that
for like an hour, but but it was a big hour.
The only way I was able to actually get over it was because I had finally made the decision that I was actually leaving the gym business. That was the decision, and so because Queen was working, and that was the decision. And so it was kind of like a fire sale of like liquidating all my secrets. That was kind of like all the things that I knew about running the gym. I'm just going to give it away. And so when he asked me like how much, I didn't want to actually like do it. So I just named a really high number so I wouldn't have to. So he'd just be like, no, okay, I'm good.
Right.
But he said yes. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. And so I called the next guy, because we had 8, and I was like, same conversation. And he was like, how much? And I was like, X plus $2,000. And he was like, okay. And I was like, really? And so by the end of the day, we made like $60,000. And I was like, I looked at Leila and I was like, babe, I think we're still in the gym business. I was like, I think we're just doing it wrong. And so that was pivot number 3, which went from gym launch 1.0 to gym launch 2.0. And so that whole weekend, I'd already put together the fulfillment section for the gyms, because I already had to do that part. So it was really just the acquisition side that I added to it. It took me like the whole weekend to film, and then everyone got their logins.
You took like the SOP of how you're going to train your internal staff, and instead you just pointed that at the customer.
Exactly.
Hey, I'm going to teach you how to fish. And that's been a big part of what Gym Launch has been, is you're the anti-agency, right? You pay us to not run the business for you. Which I absolutely love, because most small business owners need to have their hand on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And they need it, because you have to be able to course correct quicker than what you can do when you delegate and outsource.
You have to own your acquisition. Like, you have to be your own rainmaker. There's no one who will pay more attention to your money than you, period. Especially at this scale.
So when you made that shift,
Yeah.
That was like May-ish. What'd you guys do that first year in terms of roughly what kind of revenue?
We did 5.5 million.
That when you were trying to do Queen transformation, when you're trying to do this other stuff, did you think that level of revenue was going to happen?
Doing Queen, no. I mean, doing the original gym launch, like the V1 model, I could see the revenue, but I just the margins and like the scalability, it was hard. I wouldn't have wanted to make 5.5 million. Like it would have been hard.
Yeah. And so I guess what I'm saying is like, what kind of mental paradigm shifts did you have to go through when you finally committed to that? Cause you grew a lot that year, man. Like, and you've continued to grow, but that first year was like, you were shedding snakeskin and butterfly to, all kind of transformations were happening all at once. I mean, I watched you grow personally. I watched you grow professionally. You've added on like 800 pounds of muscle. Like you were just all growth. So what did you had to change the paradigm of getting out of scarcity mindset, but you also became a CEO and you did all these other things. So talk me through that a little bit.
So there's so many things that happened at the same time. And so it's like, I'm not sure which one of them, but I'm pretty sure it was all of them that were the contributing factors. Sure. So I worked with the coach for, I want to say 9 months during the hardest period of that time. You know what I mean? Like it was from me beginning to sell the gyms, right? It was really me deciding to not do my gyms anymore. So from that point through my head on DUI, my mom getting sick, our processing getting shut down, which is a wrinkle I forgot to tell about during the story where we could have processed money. I was still floating $3,000 a day out of pocket, waiting for sales that I would not be able to process for a month. It was horrible. During that whole, and every day I work with this guy for 90 minutes, every single day, 5 days a week. And the only thing that he would ask me was, what is your attention on? And so piece by piece, the analogy that he gave, and this is the most visual analogy I can give, is like, if you have human capacity as a jar of marbles, right? And so every time you have a little thing that bothers you or something that takes your attention, one of those little marbles goes out. And that's kind of like your human potency, your ability to process information and do things. Right. And so if you've got issues with your mom, you've got things that you're not coping with, so you're drinking to cover it up. If you've got relationship issues, if you've got an employee who you don't trust, you've got a bad partner, all of these things start adding up. And then you have so few marbles left that seemingly small things can set you off, and your ability to process and prioritize actions and information is really low. And so it was a 9-month process of taking me from a state of confusion, basically, where everything felt scattered. I felt like I was busy all day, but didn't accomplish anything, kind of there, to kind of hyper-focused with very few distractions and just just like 100% focused on what we were supposed to do. And I also got married. So like there was all of these things happened in a very short period of time, because it was just, Tony Robbins says transformation happens in an instant, right? And so it was just, I think, a decision that, have to make this work. And that was really, I was just like, because what happened was the partner that I had at the last location that I had opened of the 6, right? I sold the other ones and put the cash into that business. And then that partner ended up taking that money out of the business and then filing bankruptcy. And I was the one on the lease. And so everything that I had worked for, all of the gyms, within a matter of like, I had this high of selling, and then literally like a month and a half, 2 months later, the money was gone. And so it was like watching years of your life just disappear. And I was like, it has to be for something. Like this has to become something. And so that is kind of what propelled me through that like massive growth period of pain and discomfort, to, go all in on my relationship with Leila, which at the time we were like half in, half out. Like, are we going to do this? Are we not going to do this?
Yep.
Go all in on this business and cut out all the side businesses. I had all these little side hustles. I was like, maybe I'll do this for chiropractors. Maybe I'll do this for dentists. Like, doing the little, I can market too, like all these little things, all these distractions. And it was just, what is your attention on? And so piece by piece, I stripped all of these things away, so there was nothing left. And so once I had all the marbles back in the bowl, that's when things exploded, and the first month we did 180, the next month we did 360, next week we did 480, 780, and then we cracked $1 million, and then 1.2, actually we did 1.3, then 1.5. Like I remember the first, that was the trajectory that we did just in the first 6 or 7 months.
I like that concept of transformation happens in an instant, because I think sometimes momentum is like you knock one domino and then the domino effect happens. But what I watched you do is you walked in and said, I'm just going to knock over the table. And all the dominoes are on the floor, and and then I can just focus instead of waiting for this ripple effect, right? Yeah. You just said no. And you did a Facebook Live actually on that marble analogy, and it massively helped me. It was awesome and so I looked at what are all the little open loops, unfinished conversations that you've started. And they're not always business related. It can be like, you haven't finished cleaning the garage, right?
Most times they're not business related. That's the thing. Most of them are not business related. And those impede your ability to do business. And you're like, why is business so hard? It's because you have so little human attention left that easy problems seem difficult. But like for anyone who's experienced this, who's listening, if you have a good night's sleep and then sometimes you're working on some problem, you wake up and you're like, oh, that was obvious. Why was I struggling with that? It's because even overnight you get a little bit of attention back and then it's like obvious. But like the effect of stripping everything in your life away is like that times 100. And so like, I think I'm smarter than I was. Like if I could take a test, like I think I'm smarter, I'm faster now than I was. Because I don't have all these things that weigh me down.
Yeah. And we talk about it sometimes using like computers. It's like having 1,000 tabs open on your computer.
Totally.
It does slow down your computer. So it's like, okay, close all those tabs, work on the task at hand. And not only does the computer work faster, you work faster and are less distracted. And so we could take this next a couple of directions, right? Like, so since then you guys have launched, other things, right? Now that you have systems and teams in place, you went from saying, I can't be distracted, I can't having side things, to having more than one revenue stream in the business, right? How did you know it was the right time to add another prong?
I'll give you the husband-wife answer. Leila finally let me.
And then again, you and I have been through some of this together. Right? We won't go into that here, but like, there was a time where you started to do the second prong and then you realized it's not right.
So it took me 2 years to do it after that. I mean, it took 2 full years, which in entrepreneur years is like 50. So, or felt like it. But I think that, and this is what I, tell the gym owners when it's like, when should I, start something else? It's like, you have to get to a point where the business is growing month over month and you're bored out of your mind. And it has to keep growing. It can't just stay where it is. It has to grow continuously without any need for your intervention. And so that was where I was at that point. And so I was able to, and part of the reason also is that we were trying to figure out more ways that we could monetize acquisition for the gyms. And so this was an easy, zero cost way for gyms to make more revenue per member. You know what I mean? And so that's why we introduced our supplement company and our supplement selling system. And, the first month there, we did 750, the next month we did 1.7. So, I mean, like that took off like a rocket.
That's awesome.
It was done the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you waited until, so, I was listening to one of Alex Sharfin's podcasts the other day, and he talked about that whole, like, as the CEO, you have to step back into that role of CEO, stop doing the day-to-day so that your team can actually fill that void. And 2, so that you have bandwidth to lead and create and do the things that you have to do. And that's kind of what you're saying. You had done all of that. You had created that opening of bandwidth because your team was doing their job so well that you could say, okay, now I have the resources mentally and physically to go create another piece, right?
And to be candid, it's I don't want to seem like I have it all together. There's a balancing act that happens of like, how far is too far away to step away and how far is too micromanaging. It's just like the dichotomy of leadership, right? Like justice and mercy. You've got delegation and micromanagement. Like, and so you always have to walk this gray line, and some days you walk a little too close to one side, and other days you walk a little close to the other.
100%.
I think that, when I was doing the supplements, honestly, I think I was a little bit too far away, but in some senses I needed to be to get all this other stuff ready. So
totally get that.
If I were the CEO I am now, when I went through that, I would have done it maybe a little differently than I did, but you learn, it's just part of it.
And likewise, right? Like, it's all about growth. So a couple of big things, like you're absolutely crushing it, right? I think the business now, like looking back on when you were worried about paying for a lease at a gym, that now you could sneeze and it would be paid. What changes? Like, my guess is that you're currently not stressed about money for bills, right? So what stresses all of a sudden do you have to keep a better eye on when when your core stresses or your core needs are covered? Does that make sense? Like,
totally.
What shifted in your?
I have a great analogy for this for you.
Great.
So this is the back of napkin realization that I had. So my original goal when I started out way back when was I wanted $4 million in cash after taxes in my bank account. Because I was like, I know if I can live on 5%, that's 200,000 a year, that's more than it, right? And then once I had that, I was like, okay, I need 10 million in cash after taxes and everything. And then like, once we hit that, I was like, okay, so I see where this is going. And is it because I'm greedy, or is it because of something else? And I think there's levels of self-awareness, and like, I don't think it was greed. And so I was like, then what is it? What's this thing, right? That's creating anxiety for me. And so the goals that we set for ourselves as entrepreneurs, and this was the realization I had, is based on the business that you currently have. And so for like a working out analogy, if you're benching 225, benching 405 seems unbelievable, right? But when you actually bench 405, you hit 395 like 2 weeks ago. And so when you hit 405, it's actually not that unrealistic. And so to the same degree, the business that you have today is not going to be the business that creates the income that you want as your goal. And so that means that the level of liability that you're exposed to in the business that would actually create that okay, let me reverse this. So I'm going to give numbers example because it's easier.
Yeah.
So let's say that, and this will resonate with hopefully any of the entrepreneurs who are listening. You make $1 million a year. Okay. Just as a number, you make $1 million in revenue per year. And let's say that you have a 20% margin. So you're taking home $200,000 a year. Your Aunt Edna's like, Tyler, why are you $1 million a year? Who needs more money than that? You're greedy. You stop working so hard, right? And so $1 million a year, you're making $200,000 take home. The problem is with that $200,000 take home, you're exposed to $800,000 a year in liability, right? Which means that in a quarter, you could lose everything that you saved. And so despite the fact that that arbitrary amount of $200,000 to some person may seem like a lot, in the context of where you are in the liability and risk you're exposed to, it's not a lot. You've got a quarter of padding and then you're done, right? And so to the same degree, when you take home $1 million off of 10 million, or you take home 10 million off 100 million, $10 million is 1 month's worth of expenses. And so you never actually feel like you escape the game of the anxiety of needing to continue to provide. And so that was kind of my realization from a numbers and relative scale standpoint, that I realized I was never going to get out and to just accept the fact that there's uncertainty and always know what my plan B was. And so my plan B, like, I don't know if you've heard this analogy, but like a building, like the lowest level in your building gets higher as your skill set levels up. And so when I started my gym, my plan B was I would Uber during the day and I would strip at night. That was my legitimate plan B. I was like, I'm young, I can strip at night, I have the energy, and I'll make 150 grand a year and I can start something else. Once I learned how to sell and I knew I was good at sales, my plan B was I'll go sell cars, because that was something I know I could go to a dealership and make $250,000 a year if I just hustle. I know I can do that easily. And so and then after that, my next level up was like, okay, I know how to market and sell. And so plan B is like, I can go to any business and do acquisition for them, right? And I can do rev share things. So now the next one was like $1 million a year. Right now, realistically, I think if I made a post and said, hey, we're doing business coaching, I could probably make a mastermind that does $3 to $5 million a year. And so that's kind of like my lowest level, floor right now, because of what we've achieved up to this point. And so that is what gives me the respite from the anxiety, more so than thinking about it within the context of my current business.
So essentially what you're saying is cash flow and reserves will never be sufficient to stop the fear of uncertainty.
No.
Because they're tied to the business, right? But if you say, no, my plan B or my certainty comes from my knowing that I have additional ways to create revenue, then that's what's allowed you to have kind of that balance of certainty, even in the midst. So that's what's so amazing, right? Is people have a hard time looking up in paradigms and seeing risk, right? What you just said about Aunt Edna. To Aunt Edna, why are you even stressed? You're making $1 million a year. And you're like, no, I know I'm one bad month from utter chaos.
Right.
One employee sabotage, whatever, right? Or one gym owner standing up on a chair, right? We're one situation away. And so you have to, so what you're saying is it's not about revenue or cash flow that's going to do that. It's about your ability, your knowing and believing in your plan B and your ability to tackle whatever has to come next.
It's about skills.
It's all about skills with a Z.
I'm one of the biggest pieces of content that I made is called talent stacking. And I could go on a huge riff about that right now, depending on your audience, but I can choose not to. Okay. If we have time, I'll bring it up.
We got time. Yeah,
All right.
we're good.
So this is the single principle that I talk to everyone who especially works, for me, is that so stacking talents and skill acquisition is the single greatest investment that you can make. That's not a new concept, right? But if you illustrate it, it's not like a 1 + 1 + 1 scenario where it equals 3. And so let's say we take Jay-Z, right? So Jay-Z's not this, but he's a billionaire or whatever. He's super up there. But why is that, right? In the beginning, he was a musician. Okay, so that was his first. I mean, even before that, you could say he had an ear for music.
Right.
First,
right.
Second was he learned how to play beats. Third, he learned how to rap. Fourth, he learned how to promote himself. Skill. Once he learned how to promote himself and make music as a musician, he then learned the skill of creating a label, right? And then he learned how to promote other people. And so those talents, when stacked together, became disproportionate in terms of how much revenue can be created. In a different example, for like an everyday type, employee, let's say you're good at math, right? Okay, you're good at math. Great, it's a skill. Then you're like, all right, I'm going to apply this and become a bookkeeper. Okay, I'm good with math. That makes sense. I'm a bookkeeper. Then you get a master's in accounting. Okay, now this is a little bit more relevant. Then I start learning about tax. Ooh, okay, now I can provide value to a business. Then I start learning about insurance vehicles that I can use with tax to start having massive savings and decreasing liability and risk. Then you add legal on top of that, or you add banking on top of that. And then all of a sudden you can literally see this resume for this person. And you literally go from 30,000 a year to 60,000 a year to 90,000 a year to 250 a year to he's a partner at the thing, he's making millions, right? And so when you layer these talents on top of one another, and the reason starting up entrepreneurs don't make money for such a long time, they're acquiring the skills, but they acquire one skill, and that's still not all of the requisite skills to get to just from 0 to 1, right? First, you learn how to make an ad, okay, but you don't know how to make a landing page, okay, great. But then you learn how to make a landing page, but then you realize that you have a shitty offer, and then you learn how to write headlines, you learn how to write copy, and you write like creative, and then you learn how to convert test, and then you get a lead. And then you're like, what the fuck do I do with a lead, right? And so it's all, and then you learn how to convert and learn how to monetize. And so there's all these skills. And so people buy a course on email marketing and think it's going to make them money when it may very well deliver on the promise of teaching you how to email market, but you still need 6 other skills to make your first dollar.
Right.
Sorry, this is my rant on.
No, that's a huge rant. So here's my question. How do you balance continuing to up your game and talent stack with not taking on every role and properly delegating and assigning, right? Like to be the CEO, you need to have the talents, but not be the one, flexing the muscle, right? So it's a balance.
So you are always coaching. It's just who you coach changes. So in the beginning, when you're a coach, you coach your clients. And then you coach your employees who coach your clients. And then you coach the people who coach your employees who coach the clients. And so that, and the people who you are coaching, their skill set that you bring in levels up. And so your ability to gain their respect has to be higher so that they respect what you were saying when you were coaching them. And where you get breakdowns is where the people who are necessary to run an organization at a certain size, their skill set surpasses the owner and they no longer respect him. And that is why the organization will flatline. And so the owner has to consistently up their game to learn new skills, learn new perspective, get different angles so that they can still provide value in exchange to the other people eventually. And so my views on talent have so fundamentally shifted over this last 3 or 4 years. When I had my gym, an expensive employee to me was $50,000 a year. I was like, this guy's got to do everything. This guy's got to do everything, right? And then we started Gym Launch, and like my most expensive employee year 1 was like 70. You know what I mean? Like that. And that was like, hey, you better be ready to work. This is a real, and then the level of skill that attracted from $70,000 jobs to $100,000 jobs, very different levels of skill. And then when you go from 100 to 250,000 a year, night and day difference. And so a lot of times we as entrepreneurs expect someone to come in at X, when in reality, that person, like you want somebody who's going to direct your marketing and he's going to work for 60,000 a year, right? Who's going to direct the entire thing. Somebody who can make it rain is making it rain, and he's making it rain for himself or herself. And so it's like, you have to give that person an incentive, or you have to give a good amount of money for that level of person to come. And so that's where you're almost buying someone's small business, right? You're acquiring all of their, so I'm going to buy all your contracts and I'm going to pay you that much just to work full time for me. And that's where you start getting kind of like the in-between, more freelancer than entrepreneur, but like they're independent enough. You know what I mean? So there's this middle ground between employee, freelancer, entrepreneur. It's like that freelance-ish type person. And then there's some people in corporate where, like, if you want really high-level corporate talent, smart-ass people, right? But they want equity. You know what I mean? They want stock options. And like, if you want real players. And so that's what I've learned now. Some of the people that we brought in, you know, who have, you know, small stakes, minority stakes in the company, the level of skill set, the level of experience, the insight that they have, and true expertise, because my CFO knows way more about finance than I ever will.
Right.
You know, like way more than I ever will.
Right.
And so, but that's not my role anymore. My role is to be able to identify skills in other people. And that's where like the level of discernment becomes important, because you really have to just
it stops becoming acquiring the talent yourself and more like managing those talents. And
if you think about it organizationally, an organization is stacking people who stack talents. And so now we're because the sum of the parts, right? Because if I have somebody who knows how to write copy, headlines, emails, blah, 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 all that stuff, and he's the marketing person, that person on their own, without somebody who knows rockstar fulfillment, can't make nearly the amount of money. And that's how the entire organization creates disproportionate amounts of revenue than any of the individual parts. And that's where profits create.
Awesome. Okay. So that's high level stuff that everyone should listen to. But if you're early in your journey, it might come off overwhelming. And I think the main thing to realize is like step one, you've got to get your attention back.
Yep.
You got to develop the talents that are missing, either through going and getting those talents or hiring them. But so you've done some big changes, and we're going to start wrapping up here, but like, how did you go through when you had employees that worked with you at the beginning, like it's time to move up, right? There's a human element there. How'd you manage that kind of growth, but still being a good guy?
Yeah. I mean, we've cycled through our leadership twice.
Yeah.
I mean, because I will share numbers just to give context for the people who are listening. The first year we did $500,000. The second year we did 5.5. The third year we did 28. This year we'll wrap up at 45. And so the level of skill set of somebody who is running a quote finance department at $5 million is somebody who's like a bookkeeper / accountant. The level of person who's running the books at a $45 million business that could be valued at multiple hundreds of millions of dollars on a valuation standpoint has to be rock solid, right?
Massively different.
Right.
And it's hard, and it's really hard for those people to be like, oh, I'm going to step down and let a new leader. They're not going to do it. There's pride in leadership and
totally
just moving forward.
And so we had to cycle. I mean, and everything breaks. So it's the rules of tens and threes, right? It's a Chinese rule. But I don't know if you've heard. For the listeners, everything breaks at tens and threes. And so in terms of your team, once you get to 10 people, all the systems that you had up to that point break. And then you create new systems, new cadences, and new, like, where everyone reports and responsibilities, right? And then it grows and grows and grows. And then to around 30, everything breaks again, right? And then you grow from 30 to 100, and everything breaks again. And so it's the rules of tens and threes, because the organizational structure itself is it's an organism. And so it has to also adapt with the growth of the company. And so it's like the skeleton for what's happening on the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we're going to wrap up. Here's my one big thing. Business is amazing. You guys are crushing it. But without, like, business is to fuel life, right? So what's one major item on Alex Hormozi's personal non-business bucket list that you're going to do in the next 12 months? Like, you might leave your house.
I don't have a non-business bucket. It's a good question. You know, this is my game right now. I mean, whether if I go to, like, we work from home. So if, like, I want to do something, we go. If we want to go get coffee, we do it in the middle of the day. It doesn't, like, we don't have obligations in that sense. So I don't feel the need to, go do things. If we want
you have nothing to escape, right?
So, right. I have nothing to escape. And so right now I'm all in on this and seeing the results that just the life change and to be candid, just the amount, I'm excited for the amount of growth that I'm going to have to go through to go from 45 to 150. All of the breakages and pain that I'm going to probably have to go through, and the ignorance tax that I'm probably paying right now for the things that I don't know that are about to happen to me. So, that's the real role. So I love this game and I'm going to keep playing it. I don't have any non-bucket list.
Don't have them. Hey, that's fine. Well, you do. I mean, essentially it's that you know that you'll grow as a human. You have to grow as a human so that the human can run the business, right?
Yes.
And that's your game, right?
Really good
personal growth.
This is a really good one. For everyone who has a business, either your business is growing or you are growing. And so if business is not growing, you are growing through the pain. And then you grow, and then your business grows as a result until it stops growing, and then you are forced to grow in response. And so it's this back and forth organism. So if you think about it that way, then you stop getting butthurt about it when things don't go your way, because you're like, okay, it is not growing. What is the lesson or the skill that I do not have that I need to acquire in order to gain more, right? And so if you can frame this, if I can leave one thing for everyone, is that if you can always take 100% accountability or responsibility for your business and for the reason that it is not succeeding, you have 100% of the control to make it. And so, for example, if you have salespeople and you're like, I just can't find good salespeople, do you really think that there aren't good salespeople? Or do you think that you suck at managing salespeople? And that is now a skill that you can control. And now this is something that you can grow on. There's no one who's good at marketing. I'll use that one, right? Or are you not good enough at teaching other people how to market on your behalf and giving someone that skill who didn't have it? And so that is now the onus of power and control is in your court. And then you can take complete responsibility for the reason that your business isn't growing, which makes you able to grow.
That's awesome. I love that idea that you're either growing or your business is growing. And that means if business isn't growing, you're in a process of development, whether it feels like it or not, you're there somehow. Please, guys, if you're listening, please go to gymlaunchsecrets.com. I'll have links in all the notes and bios and all that kind of stuff and tell you more about Alex and where you can learn more about him. Really appreciate you coming out. My friends, my biz ninjas, it is your turn to go out and do something.
Thank you for listening to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with Tyler Jorgensen. Please make sure to subscribe so you're first to hear new interviews and episodes. If you found this podcast to be valuable, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to visit our online dojo at bizninja.com to claim your reward for listening to the show.